Bet is a bet, baby. A bet is a bet. I couldn't decide. How did I almost forget this? I couldn't decide what jersey to have you wear. But then I remembered how cold it gets in your classroom. I don't want you to catch a cold. Rock it, baby. So we made a bet. Tell them about the bet, Nick.
Well, first off, this is gonna be like garlic on my skin. Right?
Oh, this is beautiful.
Woo! Oh, this burns. Oh, it burns.
I want to catch you cold. Keep you warm, puppy.
This is.
Tell them about the bet.
Okay, I lost the bet. All right. So the bet was that they had a 4-game series and
Dodgers versus Padres.
Dodgers versus Padres.
I was gonna have you wear this one.
Yeah. Well.
But then I saw this. I was like, oh.
So Dodgers versus Padres, and we bet that whoever loses has to wear the opposing team's jersey.
It was a 4-game series.
It's a 4-game series.
And we had tiebreakers just in case.
Tiebreakers, we didn't need a tiebreaker because, you know. And I know odds are stacked up against me, but you know what? You got to believe. And just like I tell him all the time, look, I know the Dodgers are supposed to be favored in the series, whatever, but, I mean, why do you make a bet? You gotta believe, right? I hate, that's the thing I hate about what's going on with Padres right now, them investing, is that I don't like having hope. Because it's going to be shattered in the end. Every single team in every sport, their hopes are all going to be shattered at the end except for one. And my team in particular is going to be shattered, well, before the World Series or before the Super Bowl or before.
It's important to have hope.
No,
but
no,
also it's important to be realistic.
I'd rather talk crap about the other people who lose, but. Yeah.
But this bet was your idea, so I'm like, all right. And yeah. I kind of like the fact that sometimes Padre fans think they're the biggest rivals to the Dodgers, and they're not. But
you know, this is becoming an issue with like, I guess my wife's telling me at work that that there's a bunch of people like coming out wearing Padres stuff now. Mm-hmm. And then me and my son and my wife were talking about it yesterday.
That's a cool thing.
We've been there. Like my son used to have, a big fan of Jed Gierko and Khalil Green. He used to have a Khalil Green jersey.
Who?
Exactly. So, but the fact is, are we a big market team? We are the fifth. We have the 5th highest payroll in the majors, and we were having this argument the other night, discussion, and he was trying to convince me that we are a big market team. I was like, I don't believe yet. I don't, because what happens is every time we start to do something, I mean, we've had some. At one time, we had like Fred McGriff, Gary Sheffield, Tony Gwynn at the same time, and then sell the farm, and then we're back to being the Padres again. But this time, that the number one selling jerseys in the majors is Tatis. That contributes to it. You have this crazy Latino appeal, and now with Soto, it just adds to it. Machado, Tatis, and now with Soto, woo! So.
But when you say, acting like a big market team, San Diego is like one of the most populated cities in the country. So why would you not consider it a big market? It is a big market. There's over 2 million people that live there. That's a lot of people. So why is it barely coming out as a big market to them?
To become a big market, you need a bandwagon. In other words, any city you go to, you need to have fans there. Why does Dodgers have that? Well, because they used to be on the East Coast, right?
Because they win.
A little,
and winning does things. So
kiss my ass.
Anyways, the main topic we wanted to get into today, we're starting off school in just a couple days, but it gives us an opportunity. We've talked about this before.
All the time, yeah.
Making connections, and it's important to build relationships with your classes and whatnot. And so one good icebreaker to kind of consider is this whole idea of the Mount Rushmores, right? And that's kind of what we're going to get into, a little bit about the history of Mount Rushmore, and sort of allow us to kind of go into other categories later. But in the classroom, an idea that I got from a former colleague back in the day is like giving them their own Mount Rushmores. So who's your Mount Rushmore for this category, for this category, for this category? And it can be about sports. It could be about
we're gonna do a feature episode on this.
So we'll do pop culture
dishes or food
like best food dishes you've ever had. And so It's just a way to kind of get to know your kids and okay, who's your Mount Rushmore of music right now? Who's that? And so
And we'll get to those.
And we'll get to those too. But it's just a good activity to introduce into the classroom. And then kind of talk about that later. And
what crossed my mind is do a best slap at the Oscars, but so far we only have one, right? We'll get there.
It was epic.
Yeah.
So
it was worth 4.
So Mount Rushmore, what is it? Why did they build it? Who's on it? And what are some interesting facts about Rushmore? So what can you tell our viewers in England? Shout out to our 1%. We have 1% of our viewers
1%
in England, so shout out to them. Maybe it was an accident, but hey, somebody's listening. Oh, that's one of our 3 listeners, I guess.
You told me that. I was like,
yeah.
What did you say that?
Yeah. So
it popped up again, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell us about Mount Rushmore.
It's Mount Rushmore. I think they passed it in 1925, started building it in 1927, finished in 1941. And it is on a mountain in the Black Hills of South Dakota. And besides Mount Rushmore, besides like Yellowstone, why would you care to go to South Dakota? I mean, don't get me wrong, some people do, but the population is super small. I think they carry a population of definitely less than 700,000, yet they have 2 senators. So what do we need to get people to come over here, come visit, bring tourism? So they came up with an idea, you know what, we're going to carve this freaking mountain right here into 4 faces.
And you know what? Before they decided to carve presidents in there, did you know that there was other figures considered before that? And one of them, I don't even know much about it. Was Buffalo Bill. I don't know who that really is. Yeah, I was watching.
He was known to
excerpt.
make connections with Native Americans, and he actually toured around the country.
Yes, and another one was another leader from a Native American tribe. He was supposed to be one, and then I can't remember another one. There was Buffalo Bill, a tribe leader, and 2 other figures. And then they decided, you know what? Let's go with these presidents.
It'll definitely have more pull back then and now, and you can have a debate. Well, we should include this, or we can include it in history books. But remember South Dakota's goal. What will get more people to show up and stare at this thing? And that's just the way it is, right? So what 4 did they choose? They chose
George Washington.
They chose Lincoln. They chose Teddy Roosevelt and
Jefferson.
Thomas Jefferson. That's right, 3rd president of the United States. But like I've told you before, I don't think they chose Thomas Jefferson for his presidency. I think they chose it because for the Declaration of Independence. Because, like I said, his second term was a mess. But that's a whole other story for a whole other day.
But he had 2 terms.
He did have 2 terms.
Washington had 2 terms. The first 2 terms.
Yeah.
And then we have Lincoln, who didn't serve 2 terms.
We won 2 terms.
He won. He didn't complete them, not by choice.
Teddy served 2, and
then he came back for. Well, remember he was vice president.
Yeah.
And I believe
Teddy
was the youngest president.
McKinley was shot right away. And then Teddy.
So he finished off his term.
Yes.
So that counted as a term. He finished the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So that counted as a term. Even though back then there was no constitutional amendment that stated anything about term limits. So he could have continued. And we'll get to that in a moment more. But he finished the 3, served another one, and then later on he came back and ran for a 3rd term unsuccessfully, and that's Woodrow Wilson, right? Woodrow Wilson.
Most votes of any third-party president or third-party candidate in history. But that was like the election 1912 it's like a juggernaut because you have William Howard Taft actually broke up more trust than Teddy. It's in his 4 years, and he later on was the first president to ever go on and serve on the Supreme Court.
So he's considered a trust buster, but what's a trust?
We look at them today as like monopolies.
Okay.
One company just running a whole industry, and they have fears of like Amazon owning everything. They
Google,
have fears of
Walmart,
Google just being the only search engine. They have fears of Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook running
So
all social media platforms.
Taft broke more. He busted more.
By numbers.
Yeah.
Symbolically, Teddy gets the credit because he's really the first president to step up. Like, yeah, we're not going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which was crazy because he was very wealthy.
Yeah.
People were shocked.
So we have those 4 presidents on there now, and one of the cool things that I kind of like surprising facts that I recently learned. Because I'll be honest, I didn't know a whole lot about the history of Mount Rushmore itself.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was in South Dakota. You have 4 presidents, sort of kind of paying homage to previous leaders in the country. But do you know who they named it after? Mount Rushmore was named
I
after?
never knew this.
It was kind of just by random chance. And apparently it was named after a lawyer from New York. His name was Charles E. Rushmore. And he went to visit this park. He went to visit Mount Rushmore before it was called Mount Rushmore. And he asked the tour guide, so what's the name of this? And he said, the tour guide's like, it doesn't have a name. And he's like, what? What do you mean? He's like, it doesn't have a name. And so I said, well, what's your name, sir? He's like, Charles E. Rushmore. He said, okay. And so the tour guide took his name and named it after him because they didn't have a name. So Mount Rushmore was named by chance after this lawyer. And so because of that, a lawyer later donated like $500 to the park for that. So I guess you could say he kind of paid for it.
Back then.
Yeah, it was a lot more, but it didn't have a name before that.
I mean, I can imagine get caught urinating in an alley and then naming the alley after me because there was no name before. Like that's kind of what went down to a certain point. Yeah, that's super interesting.
That's a good way to kind of put it, I guess.
You know.
But the other cool thing I learned about Mount Rushmore was that in Lincoln's head, there's a secret room.
I never knew that.
And in order to enter this room, you have to enter through his face. So you can't just go, secret room. But when they built it, they said, we should make a room to store important documents and sort of in case anything happens within the country, we can hold some of these important documents about our country.
You're giving
like the U.S. Constitution
information. Right?
Well, it's not a secret anymore. Yeah. But the thing is, like, what they don't know is what else is in there and what it looks like.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi will let everybody know. Can't believe she went to Taiwan. But
so
anyway, another story.
That's a whole nother story. But so like the Bill of Rights, the U.S. and part of the U.S. Constitution is supposedly held there, and other documents that nobody really knows, and that's kind of like part of the secret. So, but it's not like, hey, let's go check out the secret room. Well, how are you gonna get there? Well, you gotta go through Lincoln's face. It's like,
and it wasn't like Alex Jones saying this stuff is there. There's like credible.
Oh no, it's there. Okay. And so, but the other cool thing I learned about sort of the history of Mount Rushmore was that they there was a possible 5th face that some wanted to be added, and in the 1930s. They introduced a bill to add Susan B. Anthony to this. Who, for those who don't know Susan B. Anthony, she was very instrumental, if not one of the main reasons why women got the right to vote.
Seneca Falls, New York, 1848, baby.
Yeah. So, but it never got voted on. It never went through. But it was just kind of like a interesting. Sort of nod to add another one, but just the way they built it, the construction of it, how much dynamite they used to literally carve into the hill, onto the mountainside.
It's amazing how it actually looks like them. They did it with dynamite.
Yeah, so they literally used dynamite, and then they use like this technique. I don't really know much about it. It's called honeycombing, where they literally like would drill holes, like big giant holes into the walls, and then carve around those holes to form different parts of the face. And so, but I don't know. It's a trip, and thinking about dynamite and how dangerous it is to scale the walls, and the people who carved this were miners. There were no deaths in the construction of this. So what's going on, Mike? Yeah. So there were no deaths.
Special guest Mike showing up.
Yeah.
How you doing, Mike?
What's going on, Mike?
Got you some goodies, man.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. Shout out to Mike here. He's our one of our
Hi,
speakers
Mike.
here.
Pop your face in.
Pop your face in here. It's on our, and our podcast.
Who are you talking to?
Yeah.
There's the camera right there.
There's a camera right there.
What?
This is Mike. Say what's up, Mike.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Yeah.
Whoever's out there in the world today.
1%.
Myth, the legend.
1% of the people who are listening are in England.
Or in England.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, that sounds great.
By the way, Mike, don't get this mixed up on one.
That's very disturbing. You know, you offend me.
It's like garlic
I had
on a
high hopes
vampire.
for you.
You didn't see the beginning, but
lost the bet.
He lost the bet. So
I lost the
now
bet.
you understand.
It was a 4-game series, lost bet. There's
Yeah.
another series this weekend, so
And you
Oh
never
my
know.
God, you got to be kidding me.
this hurt is painful, Mike. It's super.
I don't want to say who you made the wager with, but
This guy.
oh man,
me and him.
I thought it was El Gabino or something. You know?
Yeah, screw all those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, Mike.
Mike's our
Sir.
special guest. You're actually the first official guest.
Yes, today. Okay.
So thank you, Mike.
Okay. Well, it's good chatting with you guys.
All right.
You guys take it easy, huh?
All right, Mike.
And,
Good seeing you.
keep your hopes up, huh?
We just talked about that too.
The skin burns, Mike. It burns. Yeah.
You're looking out, Mike. I love Mike. Anyways, but
You keep on staring at me funny, like,
he's
oh
like,
no,
"What?
he knows.
He knows. He knows. He's a Padre fan too.
Yeah,
So.
he knows I'm a Padre fan, so-
Man.
Anyways,
So, who's on your Mount Rushmore?
you wanna
So
start
let's get
something?
into our next. So, if we had a chance to rebuild or build our own Mount Rushmore, who are the presidents who are
So
on our
There-
Mount Rushmore?
There's a couple of obvious picks there, and the first couple ones were we'll start with Lincoln. We'll start with Lincoln. Here's one. All right, here.
Been a tape on here. Tell us about Lincoln. I guess. Why did you obviously go with this order right here?
Left to right. Hey, just put it on top.
Okay.
Why Lincoln? Again, the obvious answer is that he freed the slaves, and that was a huge deal, Emancipation Proclamation. But there's so much more to what he actually did during the Civil War to not only to keep the Union together, and so and that'll be I could talk forever on any one of these presidents. So fascinating, especially Lincoln. One of my favorite books, actually, on leadership I've ever read in my life. I did a master's program in leadership, and that book wasn't even the program. It was called Lincoln on Leadership. The guy was absolutely phenomenal, super high IQ, way ahead of his time. The second one, like I said, another obvious one would be Franklin Roosevelt. Now, I do have, like sometimes the right person comes along at the right time, and the wrong person comes along at the wrong time. Like say Herbert Hoover, he was actually an incredible individual, self-made man. He was an orphan, but guess what? He got elected at the wrong time. He was the third president, along with their Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon. They came to the same economic policy that brought the Roaring '20s, and then Hoover got elected. Things were still going great, and all of a sudden, big crash. And so he was super able as a leader, but he just was there at a certain time. So, but with FDR, similar fashion. I always like to joke he's a C student at Harvard, but I don't want to discredit that too much because I was more of a C student at San Diego State. So, weigh that one out. But absolutely phenomenal as far as us leading us to two of the biggest crises in United States history. Alongside the Civil War, War of 1812, whatever, but he led us through two of them. And the only president ever to serve more than one term. He actually got elected to 4, but he died soon into his 4th term. So, Great Depression, of course, World War II. The third one I'm going to go with is, and my personal favorite president of all time, I'm not saying he's the greatest, but my personal favorite, and that is Teddy, his distant cousin, Teddy Roosevelt. And why? That had more to do with, he's a big reason why we are not only the most powerful country in the world as far as his globalization, our military, expanding to other areas, controlling Latin America. Some of the stuff is not okay. Yeah, you brought it. Yeah, I never did.
This is my nod to Teddy.
Yeah.
He's not on my list, but
Yeah.
I couldn't find anything sort of to tie into Teddy, so I bought my
So-
Black Bear Diner coffee mug.
So with Teddy, with all these guys, you could argue, well, there was a downside with a lot of great Americans. There's always a downside. We should never worship individuals. There's always, I mean, the United States did not become number one in the world by holding hands and kissing babies. You know what I mean? No, it did not. That's not how it went. But now we still have the Constitution we have, and hopefully move forward in the way that it was founded with similar spirit and progress. That's what we're always looking for, right? So Teddy, as far as colonization tactics, but even as far as union, promoting the idea of like unions, just protecting the average man with Meat Inspection Act of 1903. He's the reason why at the back of everything you eat has labels and all the ingredients and stuff like that. He actually ruled in the big issue with the coal strike of 1902. He actually sided. He was the first president ever to side with workers in that struggle. And there's another other thing I could drop. The famous trust buster. But
Speak softly.
yeah. But why was he so
And
interesting to me? Well, one, I have asthma, really bad asthma.
Oh.
I have bad asthma. He has bad
I
asthma.
love the box.
So presidents sometimes install things in the White House just for their terms. Like Barack Obama, he installed a basketball court. Eisenhower, he put in like 3 holes or 6 holes of golf or something like that. It's something. Nixon put in a bowling alley. Teddy put a boxing ring. And he was actually boxing someone. He actually boxed the world heavyweight champion. This is like bare knuckle days. And he socked the champ, socked one of his eyes and left him partly blind in one eye. I mean, dude, Teddy's a badass. So did he do some bad things? Yes. But again, these are reasons why we are number one in the world. And all these 3 characters are all keeping together union, holding us up between 2 crises, and the most consequential crisis, I would argue, of all time, the World War II, right? And of course, Teddy with that. And the last one, this was a little bit tougher. I was thinking Lyndon Johnson, because he actually brought more people out of poverty than any president in United States history.
Civil Rights Act, Voting Act.
Civil Rights Act of
Voting Rights Act.
1964, Voting Rights Act of 65. Again, not the nice guy in the world. Very much a self-made man from Texas. More Southern Democrat, but he...
Did you know that LBJ, though, was also a teacher?
I didn't know.
Yeah, he was a teacher for a couple of years.
Yeah. Of course, there's stories of him being a womanizer. There's a lot of these stories coming out now. I heard one time that his wife's secretary, his wife walked in a room, and LBJ was screwing the wife's secretary on that couch inside the White House. So we always point to like Kennedy's being, and don't get me wrong, Kennedy has this thing going on. Yeah, the thing with the Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, these things happen, right? But LBJ was weird. He was.
Yeah.
He actually had a nickname by the Secret Service. They used to call him Old Bull's Balls.
What? Never.
I'll tell you the reason why
right.
later.
Okay.
Inappropriate, but the last one I'll throw up here is elected in, I think it was 1854, he's elected in 1844.
Yeah, let's get into more.
So a lot of people would look at him negatively because of the Mexican-American War, and I'm not saying we should side with America and Mexico at the time. I can make arguments for, hey man, this guy's a freaking dick because whatever, but the fact is he came in office with 3 goals. Why is America number one? He is a big reason why. He wanted to take the Oregon Territory from the Brits. He wanted to take California from Mexico, figure out a way. And the last thing is that he wanted to create a protective tariff, and he accomplished all those things. He set out initially, hey, I'm going to just serve 4 years and I'm out, and he was famous for burning the midnight oil. He was a workaholic like crazy. So he did it 4 years. He was actually the president that got before there were just candles in there for lighting at night. He had a kerosene lamps installed throughout the White House. But that was, and they called him Pope the Purposeful. He's frowned upon by a lot of people for obvious reasons. But again, I'm focusing on the idea of why is the United States number one today? Why can we enforce certain things around the world? And this is my line of sir.
So, I mean, there's no president that is perfect. All of them had flaws. They all accomplished something, and they all were criticized for something else. And our lists are by no way driven by politics. They're not all because they're all Republican or Democrat. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's just more looking at
And other people's list might be
yeah,
that, and that's
everybody's
fine.
that, and that's the
fine.
whole purpose of this is like
Yeah.
what do you value more for your list,
Yeah.
right? And that's what I tell my students when you come up with your list is like, what do you find of value the most? And so for my list, it's, I have a couple similarities on here, but I'm going to start first with good old George.
That was another honorable mention of mine.
I
It's
have to
close.
go with George Washington because he was the first, and he was the first one to lead. After during the Revolution and whatnot, and yeah, we can go into his accomplishments and all that, but the fact that he took on the leadership and took on Great Britain, and to establish a new country, this whole American experiment, right? But also, what I find very interesting and what I liked about him is that after his second term, he made the decision to step down because he did not want to be seen as a king. Because that's what we went away from. It's like, we are not a monarchy. This is a democracy,
Yeah.
and we should be represented appropriately. So, he felt that by continuing on to another term would be like, I'm becoming king.
Under
We
the
wanna
Articles
get
of
it.
Federation, they actually tried to make him king, and he's like, dude, we just
got
fought
away
a
from
big
that.
war. Another cool story of the reason why I'm a fan of his, and it's more symbolism, is that during the Revolutionary War, the Brits showed up at his house, and he has a beautiful property over there in Virginia, across the river. Why can't I think of the freaking name? Mount Vernon. Thank
Okay.
you. An amazing property. If you go, you will be blown away
Yeah.
by its simplicity, but just in awe of just how beautiful it is there. But in case point, slaves, yes, but the biggest thing symbolically that I think that tells the story of so many other things he created as president was one time during the Revolutionary War, Brits showed up to his house, and of course he wasn't there. He was off fighting, and they said, all right, we want you guys to give us, all the people that work the house, we want you to give us all your supplies, all your provisions, whatever. And they did. Because, hey, if you don't do it, we're going to burn this house down. And so the works, okay, yeah, here you go. So George Washington came back to the house, and they told him, hey, this is what happened. They stole our supplies, this and that. And George Washington told him, why did you give it to them? You should have let them burn the house to the ground.
Wow.
I mean, that's the kind of badass he was. Okay?
He was the first one to get started. So that's why I put him on there. I was like, I have to.
Loyalty to the Constitution.
So
baby. Yeah.
my second one is, and it is really hard to come up with just four. There's a lot of several. I wanted honorable mention to Teddy Roosevelt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lyndon B. Johnson as well. Eisenhower for a couple of reasons.
Eisenhower crossed my mind.
But
Modern freeway system. Go ahead.
I went with hope. And if you remember, in 2008, Barack Obama gets elected. We were entering a recession, and I remember a lot of the immediate impacts that we experienced due to the. We saw again, gas prices went up, but the housing industry crashed.
Biggest economic collapse since 29.
Oh my God! It was scary because a lot of people lost their jobs, and in the profession of teaching, we saw that really hit
Teachers
home.
been let go. A lot of people losing their houses.
A lot of teachers got let go, but also we saw in order to not let go of teachers, the district I used to work in, they had to freeze our salaries, and that was like sort of
Even here, that was going on for years.
yeah, and so not only because he's the first black president, but because at that time he came in, we're in Iraq still. Dealing with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and this ongoing war on terrorism, he was responsible for getting rid of Osama bin Laden, leader of Al Qaeda at the time, who was mastermind behind the 9/11 attacks and all that. But more than anything, it was just he gave people hope. And everybody, again, every president has their flaws. Every president has something that you can criticize on. That's not the point about this. What he provided was hope for a multitude of people.
There's definitely an argument for FDR.
Yes,
similar fashion.
And that's why, in a similar fashion, my next president, along with Barack Obama, Franklin Roosevelt, the same thing. At a time where we were dealing with the Great Depression, Later on with World War II, during the Great Depression, he gave people hope. And through his alphabet soup programs, the WPA, the NWA, the NRA, and all these alphabet acronyms for different programs, he was trying to get people an opportunity to go back to work. Many of them lost their jobs and whatnot, but he gave people hope. And with Franklin Roosevelt, the other thing about him was that he really changed the way the public
perceive the role of government
and the president, because he spoke to them personally.
Yeah.
That's how people felt.
That's right. Radio had just come on the scene, and he's
So-
the first to utilize the advent of the radio.
So he used the radio to his benefit to communicate to the public, and people would sit down before television. The radio was in their homes, in the living rooms, and that's how he talked to them on the regular. And so he used that effectively. His fireside chats inspired hope to the public, and it's no wonder why he got voted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. And because of him, later on, we get a constitutional amendment that limits presidential terms.
Right away under Truman. Right away.
So because he got elected in 1932, 36, 1940, 44, and after that I was like, you know what, we should probably put a limit on it because...
Fun fact,
You know.
did you know that a president could serve up to 10 years in office?
Yes. And that's kind of, I was referring back to Teddy, because he took over during his second year.
He was vice president.
Yeah, he was it triggers that
Teddy was
term.
the first year. Right
So
away.
you
1901.
can serve under the Constitution. It says as president you can serve up to 2 terms or a maximum of 10 years. Because if something like that, if he would have taken over from McKinley in year 3, that wouldn't have counted as a term.
He would have had to
So-
leave office within a couple
so
years. though.
2 terms
Yeah.
plus 2 years is the limit.
So what's going on right now? Who do we find presidential candidates? I know before Biden was selected, I brought up the interesting thing in my AP Gov class was, all right, can Barack Obama be the vice president of the United States? And the technical constitutional answer we believe is yes, even though it's never been tested. But if the Biden were to die and Barack Obama was vice president, he could only serve 2 years.
2 years.
But it's just fun fact. Anyway.
Last but not least, and you've already mentioned him, so we have a couple similarities. Abe Lincoln.
The rail splitter.
Abe Lincoln, just the way he led, he was a Republican at a time where the division of the country was coming to a head, and the South, heavily Democrat at the time, split, and he was all about unity, sort of like FDR, sort of like these other two. He wanted to maintain the union. He did not want to see the country split up, and so because of that, and yes, we could talk about Emancipation Proclamation, and what he did for ending slavery, but the biggest thing for me, and sort of the theme for me, was giving people hope and bringing people together and the union of the country, and that's why I chose these presidents as my Mount Rushmore for presidents. And so later on we'll get into like sports related categories and food and whatnot, but this is a cool thing to kind of get our students talking and sharing their personal beliefs on certain categories. But it definitely brings on a lot of interesting stories about.
I know in teaching, one of the important things is to bring up questions like this, open-ended ones, where they could have their choices and have evidence to support it, but they also have to know there's no wrong answer, as long as they have evidence to support it.
Exactly.
And that's the big thing here. So.
Yeah, so that is our Mount Rushmore. With that being said, what's the best thing you've seen all week?
The best thing I'll say is the given one. You know what I'm going to say.
Say it.
Juan Soto. Dude, we are...
Epic trade.
Yeah, a big thing. And so, I don't know if we're going to pull another Dodger Padre bet before the season is over.
I'm game for whatever.
But definitely for the playoffs. Yeah, we're gonna...
Oh, so you're talking playoffs already? Playoffs?
Yeah, man, it's going to happen.
You're talking play. You guys won the World Series already. I mean, end the season now.
Yeah, we did, man. We're going to...
Juan Soto, he's going to pitch, he's going to hit, he's going to play defense, he's going to do it all.
Yeah, we signed Josh Bell. We're gonna sign Kevin Durant soon. I mean, it's
gonna happen.
It's gonna be a slam dunk. Yeah.
A slum dunk.
What you got?
Best thing I've seen all week. I gotta show you. And I was gonna go because I was gonna go with food. You know, I always go with food most of the time, but
Hey, hurry up so I can take off this stupid thing.
that's the best thing I've seen all week. This right here, the fact that you're wearing this Dodger style outfit, it looks beautiful. Brings out the color in your eyes. It's beautiful. So I just love talking baseball with you and this whole Juan Soto trade. And just I saw the game because I wanted to see his first at bat. He drew a walk, but I could see how excited people were in San Diego, and that's good. That's a good thing for baseball because now they'll actually be able to compete, and they're now a threat because they talk about Juan Soto, but he's not the only thing to talk about with this trade. Josh Bell, Josh Hader, like the best closer in baseball pretty much, and people aren't talking about this guy, Brandon Drury.
I never even heard of him until you told me, and then I
He's
saw
an
batting average,
all-star.
his productivity. Yeah,
He's an all-star.
Yeah,
and what did he do in his first at bat as a slam?
He had a grand slam.
Grand
It was
slam.
blown away, and he was even reaching. He didn't
It
get
was
all
like,
that.
wow.
He still
I was
got it
talking to a
out.
friend the day before. He's like, oh, he's all excited. He's like, kind of like what you said, championship, you know, whatever. And I was like, why aren't you guys talking about Brandon Drury too? Like, he's under the radar. He's like, you guys are
As far as
scared.
productivity, he's the most productive of those three big hitters we signed.
Yeah, but definitely Juan Soto's the headliner. But yeah, I would have to say it's going to make for a lot more interesting baseball.
And just
Dodgers-
the idea that the possibility of us being now a big market team, I don't enjoy.
But
the
you guys
idea.
are a big market. I don't
enjoy the
You guys
idea
are-
of being a bandwagon.
Man.
Bandwagon fans jumping on. I do not enjoy that idea. However, I do enjoy the idea that if bandwagon fans jump on, they'll buy jerseys, they'll buy tickets, they'll buy all any city you go to, and we will be able to remain a big market team.
Hey, that's what winning does.
Winning
Just gotta win.
brings bandwagon fans. Yes.
So, but hey, when you're ready, welcome me with open arms.
You always
So.
say stupid shit.
All right. Well, if you're listening, if you're watching, we'd like to hear from you. If you had to create your Mount Rushmore, who would you put on there? Your top presidents.
Please
either
comment.
on YouTube or Spotify, for sure. You can share with us your thoughts. But who would you put on your Mount Rushmore? So,
And also, if you like the show, please, I know you can leave a review, right? And you can also follow us. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify,
Apple
Apple
Podcasts,
Anchor.
yeah, all that stuff, all good stuff. So,
All right.
all right, Papi,
I got to go to a meeting.
you look good. So
I'm
do I.
late,
I got to run a meeting. So,
I'm late.
all right, see you guys.